You're watching TVC Breakfast. Let's get into our last discussion of the day. Nigeria has one of the highest youth population in Africa, but unfortunately, most of them are without jobs. This problem has impacted other aspects of the Nigerian narrative with increasing crime, worsening insecurity, cybercrime, and others, as some idle youths have decided to become tools of evil. Although there are factors that contribute to Nigeria's unemployment challenges, a solution is paramount to ensure that the ticking time bomb of unemployment does not go off. Here is in the studio with me to discuss this, gentlemen who have been part of analyzing some of these issues and proffering solutions at different levels and strategies to help us make sense of all of this. I have with me in the studio Dipo Oyewole. He's a strategy consultant. Nice to have you, Dipo.
Good morning, Mike.
Great. And we also have Babatunde Raimi, an author and policy analyst. Good to have you join me.
Same here, Mike.
Great. Now, Dipo, let me start with you on this. From the statistics that we have about the unemployment rate in Nigeria is about 33.3%, roughly, and that amounts to about 23 million of Nigerians of the 70 million that are supposed to be working. That population is supposed to be productively working somewhere, but they are not. So 23 million is more than the population of some countries.
Yes, it is.
How serious is this from your perspective, when you see and you analyze these figures? How dangerous is it?
Well, for me, it is very troubling because you're saying 23 million. I can think of several nation states that we have to combine together, so like 7 or 8 of them, to make up that number. So that tells me that we have 8 nations within our own borders that aren't gainfully employed. And like you were saying, productive, out of 100 million people that were supposed to have to be engaged productively. Now we have 23 million. Now that is aside from the people who are also underemployed, but that's not the conversation for today. But now we're saying that 23 million, that is a very serious number. That's a very frightening number. And that is the conversation we've been having year in, year out. Unfortunately, we keep seeing the same number going up every other year, and then we're wondering, what is the government doing? Are they interested in getting this solved? What are the measures they're putting in place? But unfortunately, we haven't seen quite as much deliberate action that I would expect from the government in terms of ways to go about it. One of the sure ways to go about it is also to invest heavily in education. Either we like it or not, I would always say go back to education.
We certainly will come back to the solutions as to what should we do, how should we go about it, and all of that. But today, on the other hand, even if we were not born that time in the early 60s and parts of 70s, anyway, I was born in the 70s anyway, but then let's look at it from the analysis and even from the stories that our daddies and mommies and our uncles tell us sometimes. When they're leaving school, there's a job waiting for them already. In fact, sometimes we have these corporations and companies go into the university or the schools waiting for them, picking those of them who are bright and all of that. So there's a guarantee for a job. Now, exactly. And even cars at the time, and even a house. Although we can't compare life at that time and now, because the population at that time was not what we have right now. But if the trend was kept on that way deliberately and intentionally, I believe we should still have been in that kind of situation where we have all the bright people coming from school and then, there is placement. How did we get it wrong? And where?
How we got it wrong by not doing the right thing at the right time, using sentimentality, tribalism, nepotism, and the likes. From the analysis, when was the last time Nigeria had a census? So many years back. When you said 73 million, even average politicians don't use 73 million as a yardstick for Nigeria's population. Nigeria's population is about 200 million. So if you look...
We're talking about the active population of youth who should be working, 70 million.
Okay, if we talk about the active population who should be working now, so if we say about that 23 million that you said are not working at the moment, what impact does it have on us politically, socially, religiously, and economically. That's what my friend here tried to analyze also. If you don't have a job that you are doing as a youth, you can't even attend alumni meetings. You'll be like a social misfit. You'll be like a non-entity. You'll be alienated. You feel inferior. So all these things, they make you lose your self-confidence. And before you know what is happening, the ideal mind is the workshop of the devil. Before you know, if somebody is saying, why don't you follow me to a friend? Why don't you, before you know, you've started doing what you're not supposed to do. So let's look at it. If we have our figures correctly, we have the population of those who are not really working, we have those who are underemployed, because we look at underemployment before unemployment. It will be easy for us to plan. So as it is now, I don't think anybody is planning for us. Even if they are planning, what figures are they using to plan? So that's where we got it wrong from the beginning.
Dipo, he mentioned underemployment. You also mentioned underemployment earlier. Let's dig into it. How dangerous is underemployment? And one would say, like some of these street parlors will say, atol na bad pass, like they used to say. But the point there is that atol in the context of underemployment is also not as productive as it's supposed to be.
Yes, it's not as productive, and sometimes it's counterproductive, but it's also as dangerous as unemployment in itself. Let me try to address the question you asked him, that how did we get it wrong? Because in the past we heard that certain people attended, my father attended Unilag, and you hear that, they attended Unilag, they ate half a chicken, they had their beds made, all of that, and then you find a stark contrast to what we have today in institutions like that, and then we ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? What happened? Why couldn't we maintain those things? And I heard you say that we couldn't compare the different times. But the fact remains that even though we didn't have this population then, we have more resources now to accommodate or to take care or cater for the population we have now. It's just proper mismanagement. A few years ago, I attended a symposium organized by the former President's Chief Olusegun Obasanjo's library, and asked him a question, said, why is it that things seem to be a lot worse these days compared to when he had it in their own time? And then he said that in their own day, they had opportunities, but no institutions. That now we have institutions with even less opportunities. That those are the factors we're facing right now. So the question is, what are those things responsible for the lack of those opportunities right now? Why is it so? Because for me, I see no reason, because in the history of the human race, we have never had this much access to information. We've never had this much connectivity. We've never had this much access to capital, to information, to ways to network with each other, to be better productive with ourselves. And we see
so we're a better place now than it used to be at the time.
We're better placed now. Either you're in Nigeria or you're in somewhere else in Africa or any other part of the world. So the question is, why can't we maximize all the resources we have now? Plain and simple. Proper mismanagement. Inadequate planning, because so far we see a lot of our leaders just coming in there to wing it. They don't come in there with any deliberate action to say that, okay, we have an unemployed population of 23% or this particular percentage. As at the time I'm getting there, what can we do to shave down the numbers? Now the technical schools and colleges are all but dying off, and everybody's focusing on the universities, polytechnics. In Germany today, you see a lot of people going into the technical colleges, and now you're interested to know that if it's really about the money, they make a lot more money than the people who go to university over there. So the question is, how did we get it wrong? Why aren't we focusing on the things we need to focus on? Speaking about the issue of technical colleges and technical jobs and acquiring skills, a jobs report came out a couple of years ago, and it was saying that in the next 20 years, that the relevant jobs in the markets won't be the jobs you get from going to study maybe engineering or medicine and all of that. It's about your skills. So the question is, that report has been out for around 3 years now. What is the Nigerian government doing to see how they can plug into that? How can we key into it? How are we positioning the youth of today and of tomorrow to see that they are relevant when that time comes? So with all indication, we aren't seeing a lot of that. We aren't seeing a lot of deliberate action in terms of getting people actively engaged and actively productive. Because we keep saying we're broke, and I'll keep going back to this. Either you like it or not, we need a productive population. A productive population will earn money, will pay taxes, will generate revenue for the government. Either we like it or not. 23 million is a lot of people. We have nations that their population is less than half that number. In total, not productive population now. I'm talking women, children of all ages, the elderly, the retired, the infants, the toddlers, men and women. Less than 10 million. but they have an active population that's less than half that number as well, and they're able to earn a living, pay tax, run their government. These are nations that have their own sovereignty, their own borders, have their own national passports recognized by the United Nations. So that's to tell us the huge impact of what we're dealing with right now, saying that we have a population of 23 million people that are unemployed. And I also believe that 23 million is also conservative, that it's a lot more than that. But let's still stay with 23 million. I think it is just really outrageous.
All right, now, Tunde, let's talk about the issue of data. Because you talked about the issue of planning. How did you arrive at this, and what are you planning? And, you know, it's just so much when we talk about the issue of plan. But narrowing it down to data, it has been one thing that Nigeria has not been able to place a hand on as to how to get data for all her population, and then ensuring that everybody falls in line in the bracket that you fall in the compartment that you fall in, so that when this benefit come, it is for this compartment, you are there, so it gets to you, you know, and things like that. So when we're looking at it from the perspective of unemployment, how far from achieving this are we?
I will say that we are very far, because as I'm sitting with you now, if you go to even MBS and ask them, what is the specific number of youth that are unemployed as of today, they might not really be able to give you the exact figure. For instance, you know, I talked about population.
But they came up with figures.
They came up with just approximately. Now, yeah, see, let's go back to the last year when we had NSAS. You know, that NSAS, whatever, was fueled to a large extent by youths who were unemployed. They were agitated, not just the police brutality. The police brutality was just an opportunity they had to express their grievances to government. So they came out to say we are unemployed. Now, as it is now, what is our population of? If you look at Nigeria as a whole, if you don't, proper planning prevents poor performance. And if we don't have this data, maybe you talk about retired people also, we have all this data in place. We cannot plan effectively. Do you understand? So if we don't manage data very well, we don't how do you budget effectively? How do you allocate resources? So these things, they are interwoven somehow. You don't just, if we like, let us industrialize. If we like, let us. If we don't have adequate data, we cannot plan effectively. We cannot encourage industrialization. We cannot encourage things that will help us reduce our unemployment in our society.
All right, now, Dipo, if we have to start taking steps towards this now, let's assume that the government decides, you know what, we want to go headlong into this issue so we can handle it. What strategies do you think, or what steps do you think we should begin to take?
Well, encourage fairness and equity. That either you went to school or you learned a skill, that you can guarantee that at the end of whatever training you do, you're able to get whatever is accrued to you on merit, either in the private sector or in the public sector, especially in the public sector. Because now,
but who guarantees that? Is it the government that should do that? Because when you're mentioning private sector,
yes,
if you're talking about public sector, you know, it's not totally guarded by how the mechanics of how individual should play out.
Exactly.
At least in the public sector, there's a federal character principle where,
yes,
okay, fine, if you're from here, let there be a balance. Although a lot of people have criticized that one way or the other, but that is what gives some level of
yes,
sense of belonging and inclusion to everyone.
So saying that it's maybe a bit difficult in the private sector may be true, but also understanding the fact that until something is ingrained as a culture in the people, we will keep having to make excuses for a lot of inadequacies and anomalies in our society. When something is the culture, it doesn't matter if you're in the public sector or private sector, it just happens, because that becomes the norm. Now today, the norm are things that we find to be actual anomalies. Those are the things that they have become the norm in our society. So I believe that it can be done and it should be done. Secondly, I also believe that it's important that it creates the environment in itself. We keep talking about the enabling environment, not just for businesses, but for people to be able to adequately get gainful employment. One thing we need to look at is security. We have a lot of people today who are young folks who are into agriculture. Are they making the most of their potentials there? Are they getting the best out of it? And they're having their farms ravaged by all sorts. Are they making it? Because we also need to understand that in the agricultural sector, they're dealing with the challenge of climate change in itself. Now, that is a natural occurrence.
Yeah.
Now, should we have to also deal with man-made issues as well? When it is something that it is avoidable, it is something that we can deal with, it is something that we can tackle headlong if we're being deliberate about it. So yes, there needs to be, and I keep using the word deliberate because we need to be deliberate with how we go about executing whatever it is we want to do with set outcomes in mind, saying that this is what we're looking to achieve. These are the results we're hoping to have. So how do we get there? We're trying to get to X, Y, Z. How do we start from ABC? So these are the questions. So I think that we're not seeing that much deliberate action from the government, and it is high time that they get it done, understanding the fact that even from a revenue perspective, if you look at it from that level, it is good business for you to get people actively engaged and productive.
All right. Now, today, finally, as we leave now, from the perspective of the people themselves, let's leave what government should do for now. Let's come from the people themselves, where your creativity, your ingenuity, your innovation, and all of that goes into play. How much of that do you see people really coming up with?
Not very much, because let me just touch that government thing a little before I delve into that. You see, look at the educational sector now. I can almost tell you that 60% of our graduates today don't practice what they studied. Do you understand? Yeah. So now I can also almost tell you that close to 30% of those who are going for MBA, MSc, whatever, are actually doing that because there are no jobs. Do you understand? Or they are doing that because they are underemployed. They want
good upgrade or something.
They want a better placement. I would rather give somebody that is unschooled 100,000 to go and learn a skill than give somebody that wants to go and study MBA, MSc money. So the thing is, let us begin.
This is very arguable.
Let us begin. It's a personal view, you know. So let us begin to, beyond the certificates, let's begin to practice skill-based education. The fact that you came out with the first class does not mean you cannot have a skill that will help you. So most of the time you see people, they don't have marketable skills. Actually, in the employment space, there are jobs in some places, but the people are not fit for such because they don't have such skills. So we should strive to develop ourselves. On the personal note, we should develop ourselves. That's how we can move forward.
That's amazing. Babatunde Raimi, thank you so much. Employability of some of these people, thank you so much. And Dipo Oyewole, thank you for coming also.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Right.